Okay, another session here in Conversations with Papi. My son Asael, my partner and my technical manager, tells me what to do and how to do it. And then his role is to simply ask me a question and then stand back. He has trouble getting me to shut up. He even has a timer. He won't admit it, but he's got a timer set so that we don't run
Smart
too
kid.
long. But that's because from the moment I could interact with this little guy, when he was the littlest possible guy, we've always enjoyed each other's conversation. We've
Yeah.
always enjoyed talking with each other. And he had to teach himself English because it's like his cousin Otmar, who speaks 4 or 5 languages. He taught himself English, I think, because he gave up on me ever learning Spanish. And he more or less said that to me one day. But several members of the family speak. I mean, your Tia speaks Spanish because she's Dominican, English because of me. She's taught herself Italian and a very high level French. And she still remembers a lot from her bisabuelos, the great grandparents, a lot of Arabic and Hindi, which came into play.
I can only remember.
It's probably some sort of curse.
I wouldn't say it.
Yeah. Well, it's because you're on her parents. Her father was a Syrian Muslim gentleman, but his parents were both from northern India. The lady was Hindu and the man was a Muslim back in the 30s or so, early 40s. That wasn't going to work then, probably wouldn't work now. So they had family ties in Syria. And that's how her father came to be a Dominican, married a classic Dominican lady and started the Lebron Chayer family. So, but at any rate, between Asael and his cousins, there's 6 boys and a girl.
Yeah, that's my sister.
And I've been blessed with children throughout my life. I've got 3 daughters. I've got a stepson and another son in Florida. Their mother's a Cuban lady, and now his Tia and I don't have children, but the children in the family have always been incredibly important to us. And one of the things I'd like to talk about now is the discussions that we have had together and with your cousins at different times when they're receptive is what kind of guidelines should you use for developing your life? And when you're young, that usually comes back to some sort of education.
Yeah.
And I've said from day one with my kids and every young person that I've interacted with is figure out what you like. Now, that's not as easy as it might sound, but most people like one thing over another.
Yeah.
If you're skilled in everything, maybe it's a hard choice. If you're skilled in nothing, maybe it's a hard choice. But most people are somewhere in the middle.
Middle.
I like this more than I like that. I would have loved for Ashley to be an engineer, but his mind just doesn't work towards mechanical things like your cousin Otmar. He should be an astrophysicist or certainly a doctorate in mechanical engineering or something. Assie's more people-oriented, and he can walk into a room cold, knowing nobody, and not necessarily dominate all aspects of the room, but before he leaves, everybody knows him and knows who he is. So business is a natural inclination. So what I've always said to everybody, and I tailor it depending on their capability and their interests. There's no sense telling a kid that struggles to get a C- in math that you ought to be an astrophysicist, okay? I used to get an A in high school in math. I barely made it as an engineer. So I understand there are mental limits, not just what you think you like. But the idea is find out what you like. Then what is the level of education that you should get to do what you like, and what's the best way to get that education. And then after you've done that step is figure out how to monetize that. I mean, at least enough to live. Everybody, even though I admire Mr. Elon Musk, not everybody's Elon Musk. And even though I've thoroughly enjoyed what I've been doing for the last 50-something years, I'm not going to pretend that I'm wealthy. I could have made a decision with guys that I'm still in contact with that work for the major oil company. We all started about the same time. We all had about the same level of education. And they were all the ones that I'm in contact with were a level above me or mine or a level below. So we're in a band. And all of them retired multimillionaires. Well, I'm not going to retire a multimillionaire. I don't care. That wasn't one of my life goals. So when I say figure out how to live on it or monetize it, well, part of that is, what are your financial goals?
Yeah.
So coming back to what you like, that's way more important than being a financial success or getting a steady job.
Absolutely.
I mean, you may not even be able to go to any kind of a school if the immediate task is you got to feed yourself or help feed the family.
Gotta get a job.
That's just the way life is for many people. Just getting through to the next day or the next week. If that's the immediate goal, just to survive, well, education the amount of education or the timing of education could be put off, and that's kind of outside of your control. But most people, once they figure out what it is they like and the things they like doing, well, do you need a college education to do that? Historically, in the United States, there was always a big push for academically brighter kids to go to university. Well, I think that might have been true 20 years ago, it might have been true 10 years ago, but I think there's a bit of a backlash now because universities have gotten so expensive and they are of very little financial value. What was the statistic that I quoted the other day? 40% of people who enter universities won't graduate.
Yeah.
Half of those who graduate will accept a job that you didn't need a college education for in the first place. And many of them, even though they've gone to state colleges, they come out $50,000 to $250,000 in debt. Well, did you really think all of that through before you did it? Because, okay, if mom and dad are paying the money, well, it's 4 years of fun and games, and you don't have the bill to pay. That may be true for some people. But for most people, if you look at the level of education as an investment that you have to make, not only financially, but your time and effort, a big chunk of your life, even for a 4-year degree. And then if you want to, there's creeping credentialism. So if you want to go into any kind of education or any kind of scientific endeavor, well, a master's and then a doctorate may be appropriate depending on the level of expertise you wish. And then years of postgraduate work. Look at what a medical doctor has to go through. 4 years of college, then medical school, and then internship, and then.
How long does it take for, at least in the US, to become a doctor?
I would say you got 4 years of regular college, and then medical school, 2, maybe 3 years, and then an internship. So you're talking an 8-year commitment for that, and you probably are, depending on the school that you went to, you're coming out with probably a couple of $100,000 in debt. So you better be sure you want to be a doctor. Well, it's not only what it is that you do, and the doctor is an example, but again, talking earlier, how are you going to do what you're going to do? Where are you going to do what you're going to do? What are the circumstances?
Yeah.
I have a doctor, he's my cardiologist. He's a good guy. He's Colombian, I think, and he's been my cardiologist now for 15 years. And 2 weeks ago, when I saw him last, after passing a stress test, he said in the middle of July, he's retiring. And we talked a little bit about what he was going to do. And I said, oh, that's interesting. We needled each other, so don't think I was being cruel. He knows I'm in the oil industry, so he's always telling me how electrical EVs are going to save the world. I finally got him to understand that, at least in the short term, that isn't true. But he has an EV, and he knows there's certain things. So, and I might even buy a Tesla because I'm getting older in the United States. I just sit in the passenger seat, plug it in, and I've got my robo-taxi to take me wherever I want. That's actually part of my business plan, to defer that when I have to move to the DR, I can stay a couple of more years because I don't have to drive. So at any rate, the idea is, what is he going to do now that he's 75 years old and has spent the last 55 years working in the same bloody office with he's helped a wide variety of people, I'm sure, and I know that's brought him satisfaction. But he was trapped in that office, working 5 days a week, and then in recent years, maybe he gets every other weekend a 3-day weekend because his practice just got big enough. I said, you know what you're going to do now? I said, every time I've been in here, you've always asked me about where I've traveled, what I've gone. It's obvious that's what you want to do. So now for your remaining years of 5, maybe 10 years of health, you're going to go do what I've gotten for free for the last 50 years. So,
Drop the mic.
yeah, so he goes, but it's true. I mean, I knew from day one I loved to travel. I was 10 different schools getting through the first 12 grades of school from everywhere from New York to Key West. And because my dad was military, and it's just in me. One, I had the experience, I liked the experience, and it's just in me to be a little footloose.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the reason I left a major oil company. I was traveling internationally with them. I had everything, but I didn't want, it was more and more time in an office doing more and more things remote from where the rubber meets the road, if you would. It was more and more levels of management, mm-hmm. which means more and more money, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to spend the rest of 25 years of my active life, or 30 as it turns out, shuffling papers and reviewing people, doing the same bloody thing over and over again, most of the time in the same office. So I walked out of a 6-figure job and the shared private secretary and the Persian carpet, and had no idea. I literally had nothing lined up to do the day after I walked out of that office. I was going to be a consultant. Hadn't even bothered to define what that meant. Okay? I just rolled the dice. No, I don't belong. I knew where I did not belong. Okay. They treated me very well. I didn't leave in anger. It was a wonderful company. And I would say to anybody, because I'm a civil engineer, got involved in the oil industry, mm-hmm. so I'm now more of a petroleum industry. What a wonderful way to learn. And I'll come back to the learning, because mm-hmm. we've talked about talking with young people, and everybody thinks that's college or a trade school. That's just the beginning of learning. If you're going to be successful, if you're going to enjoy life, if you're going to really understand life, the learning process never stops.
Never ends.
Now, the learning process may or may not lead to more money. I mean, you may decide that you're making enough money and you want to study religious history. It's a wonderful subject. I've done it. It's hard to turn that into cash. If so, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do with what I've learned?
Yeah.
If I need to monetize it, you need to be very careful. Mm-hmm. Your Tio wanted to be, what was it? And I think it was an archaeologist or an anthropologist to study at school. And your grandfather goes, yeah, who's going to pay you to know anything about that in the Dominican Republic? We're not wealthy enough to, maybe we should study it. Maybe we should study our history, but it's not likely you're going to be employed. You probably just end up being a school teacher. So think of something different. So she took her degree in international marketing, which mm-hmm. is great. She's good at it. She gets tremendous insights. And now with the multiple languages, she actually deferred her money-making part of her career because she's traveled all over the world with me, and she's my partner in many ways. But now she's, as we were talking last night, she's got different ideas to start monetizing things that she's learned. Yeah, I go, oh, finally. No, it's a joke. So, at any rate, the idea is, if you need to go to university, well, then what university? Where's the best university? And then if it's not university, well, what is it you like to do? You don't have to be an electrical engineer to be an electrician.
No, you just need a diploma in basic knowledge.
Yeah. So you need to go to a trade school and get on the job training. If you like being an air conditioner repairman, if you like being a welder, if you like being a truck driver, because you just like being on the road. I mean, that would be the ultimate goal of me if I just wanted to get out and move around. I love long drives. I've driven from Miami to Corpus Christi, Texas, and I've driven up to the border of upper New Hampshire and then in recent years to northern central Pennsylvania. These are 23, 24-hour trips.
And we also had like a 2-day or 3-day trip from your house all the way up to Jersey.
Yeah, it was Jersey. Yeah,
Yeah,
we,
in the
we had
black
that
truck.
coming back and came
Yeah.
back through the Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah.
So it was a little cramped in the car because of all the junk your grandmother bought. but there, yeah. And I like driving, so that's part of just traveling and seeing new things because I just enjoy that.
Yeah.
So that was in my case. But what I want to, so you have to have all those factors, and then even if you want to be a doctor, you need to understand that's the working condition. So if you really want to travel and you can be a doctor, well, then you should go to and join these Doctors Without Borders and go all over the world.
Helping people,
Making money isn't your goal, but helping people, and you don't want to stay in an office, there are ways to do that. Or you can join the military and get stationed around the world and be a doctor. So you didn't have to follow the path that he followed. I don't know how much consideration he gave to what he was doing as he was making his investment. But at 75, it was kind of late to ask. So I hope he was right. He seemed to be a happy guy, and I wish him the best of luck. He really was a good doctor. So it
was or is?
Probably still. He actually gave me his phone number and said, "Hey, Tom, if you ever need my advice, just call me." So that, and it's just because there's that rapport. I don't think he's going to invite me to Christmas dinner, but there is that rapport, and we genuinely enjoy talking with each other, even when we're needling each other. So coming back, I've tailor-made this speech, if you would, and developed it over the years to, depending on the kind of kid that I'm talking to. I've asked the advice, please, your IQ, in fact, you and all your cousins, your IQ is so high that you're never going to be happy if you live a life like my dad did. He was a gangster, had to go in the Navy instead of going to jail. It wasn't till he was late in his career in the Navy that somebody bothered to pay attention to his intellectual capacity. I'm sure his IQ was well above 150. And he started reading and started educating himself. And he would take a civil service test when he went to join the fire department after he retired from the Navy. And he found errors in the hydraulic calculations that were being used for the civil service test for the US government all over the world. Oh, no, this is not right. This is wrong. Self-taught guy. But he was always very frustrated because there was the knowledge that he was smarter than so many people, but never pushed himself to develop that. And I think he went to his grave with that frustration. He did die in early life, but he went to his grave frustrated that he never developed that intellectuality. Another case that I know was a guy who was an engineering aide in Albania when I was there working in a refinery. And this guy, clearly one of the smartest people I've ever met, spoke several languages, but that's not unusual for people nowadays in Europe. But I think he had 5 or 6 languages, and he was proficient at them. And I think at the time there were well over 5,000 employees, maybe closer to 10, because it was a government oil company. And there were at least 3,000 people that he had memorized their name, their birthdays, and their phone numbers. He was a walking encyclopedia. I mean, you didn't need to look up the phone book. You just had to say to him, can you get a hold, pick up the phone? And they weren't dialed in. He knew the numbers. He could tell you immediately because he had the need to keep the brain active, and he followed up on that. A very interesting guy to talk to, and he was very helpful to us. I understand he ultimately literally won the lottery for a green card to get into the United States.
Wow.
I lost track of him when he came to the United States.
Good for him.
With a brain like that, phenomenal. So he recognized that he had that capacity. And there's a guy here in Curacao that works at the refinery. He's clearly super intelligent guy. He has a job that's very well defined, but he knows a great deal about everything in the refinery, well beyond what you would expect of him from his job title. So we use him as a walking encyclopedia. Instead of we have to go look up the files, we go, hey, tell me about this. Oh yeah, this. You
got a walking computer.
And then he remembers the people that worked on it and where the files are and everything else, because he has that capacity.
Sounds like a movie scene.
And he's used that capacity. So when I joined Exxon, the multinational oil company, I had no idea what a refinery was. I knew there would, because I'm a civil engineer, I've been working as an engineering aide.
Mhm.
Pipelines didn't bother me, pumps didn't bother me, tanks of water, because I was doing water and sewers. Okay, that's great. I understand all that. And I understand they sold gasoline. That's all I knew about them. But actually, this is one of those moments where life turns on a dime that I had mentioned to you earlier. 2 or 3 weeks before I interviewed with Exxon, because all the major oil companies interviewed at my small university,
Okay.
very well respected. Nobody
Mhm.
really knows about us, but they interviewed there, and I ultimately interviewed with 3 or 4 different oil companies. But our department head, there had been a death and something else, and there was like the third guy in 2 years, and he had a complete government background. And we did our senior project, a water distribution system for a suburb area in Virginia, because we were working there on that subject anyway, as engineering aids.
Mhm.
So we used that. We used Fortran to design all the flow and the cost, and then we said, well, this alternative is better than that alternative because of the economics, this, that, and the other, and there would be a better payout. And he stopped us right there, shut us down, gave us a C, despite all the work. It was the best one that anybody had produced. And his argument was, engineers are supposed to do engineering. What's this crap about doing the economics? No, you do what you're told as an engineer. And that infuriated me. So I was still angry about that when I went to my interview with Exxon, not knowing that was exactly the attitude I had to have.
Yeah.
Engineers that's just the starting point. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to know why I'm doing it. I want to contribute to the bottom line.
Yeah.
But that speech that I gave was a direct reaction to what I considered to be an idiot that was the head of my department. My life turned on a dime. That was the right thing to say to Exxon, and they gave me an offer, and I went to Baton Rouge, which was, they always, if they needed to hire, I'm going to make the number up, 10 baby engineers right out of school, they hired 30 or 40. Why? Because over the next 3 years, they weren't looking to see who was the best engineer. Now, if you were an exceptional engineer, you might end up in the research department. But if they thought you had that potential, they'd have sent you there to begin with.
Okay.
That's where all the doctorates went. But the bachelor's degrees and even the master's degrees, guys ended up in the refinery. And I looked around. I probably had the weakest degree. I was the only civil engineer. Everybody else is a chemical engineer and talking thermodynamics this, thermodynamics that, mechanical engineer from really big name schools. And I kind of felt the odd man out. But I think it was my second week there, they sent me to a seminar. And there was an old guy retiring. And he said, guys, this is a 350,000 barrel a day refinery. There is a tremendous amount of technology involved here with all the different process steps. There's huge investments involved. There's operating costs involved. And we operate at the whims of the market. We can't control the market. So there's always a strong profit to make change, do things differently, blend things differently.
Uh-huh.
He goes, don't get lost in the detail. Don't worry about what your degree is. Don't even necessarily worry about the details of what each process is doing. I want you to focus on one simple thing. If you can figure out how to save us 5 cents a barrel, you're a hero, you'll go far. So that was the same speech that I had made.
Yeah.
That was my reaction. And the guy leveled the playing field. Even though I really was the laggard in the group, he kind of made, well, yeah, that makes sense. They just go after what they're doing for why does it make money? How does it make money? What does it cost? How can reduce the cost? Yeah. And then ask, and then what are we doing? We're distilling, we're doing a chemical conversion. We're at what pressure, what temperature, what flow rate? That was secondary information.
Yeah.
No, what's my goal? What's my job? Say 5 cents a barrel in a 350. Now, you could argue, let's say if it was $1 a barrel, that'd be $350,000 a day.
These points that you are enlisting, where did that come from? You mentioned something about the Texas rancher. Is it related to that or something like that?
It's an old joke, but the Texas, everybody knows ranch, or everybody in the United States knows that ranchers in Texas own a lot of land. And there was a particular rancher that everybody in the valley was saying he was a greedy, greedy guy. And he goes, I'm not greedy. I just want the land next to mine. So, wait a minute, no end to it. And the same gentleman, as I recall, that told me, hey, don't get lost in the technology, don't get overly fascinated, think very simple. A 350,000 barrel a day refinery, try to save 5 cents a barrel. So if it was 10 cents a barrel, that'd be $3,500 a day. And you go, well, that's not a huge amount of money. But you stop and figure out.
But in the long run.
No, but that's every day, day in, day out. But I was also top of the class engineer at the best refinery that the company had, making about $1,000, making about $1,000. Go ahead, you've already up. So we can restart now.
Yeah.
The same guy that suggested to me, don't get lost in the detail, look for 5 cents a barrel savings on a 350,000 barrel a day refinery. Well, if that was $1 a barrel, $350,000 a day, if it was 10 cents, that's 35,000. He said even 5 cents, so that's half of that. But I was a top paid engineer back in 1970, something just under $1,000 a month. It was not a lot of money when you look at it. So that works out to be $250 a week.
Around how much is that in today's money?
Well, let me talk about then money. That's $250 a week, and so roughly it's around $6 or $7 an hour. So, it's $50 a day, and okay, that's multiples of what they were paying for me. So they did expect a lot, but to keep things in context, he just said, simplify your life. He said, that doesn't mean don't care about the technology, but every question that you ask it in the context of how is that going to help me lower the cost? How am I going to get my 5 cents a barrel savings for the company? And that just opened a lot of doors for me mentally. And then he told me the story about the Texas rancher, and his point was, you have a small kernel of knowledge. You as a civil engineer, you're a chemical, you're a mechanical, you're electrical. All of you have some overlap, but you don't have anywhere near the knowledge that you need to have. He said, over the next 2 years or so, the company is going to invest 10, 15% of your time in training you in the basic technology. Again, don't get lost in the details. Make sure you understand why, knowing that pressure, that temperature, that kind of catalyst, whatever it is, make sure you understand that you know how that helps you save money. So he said, and what should you study next? He said, well, the example of the Texas of the rancher, what's the next piece of knowledge that guy over there knows that you don't know? So in my particular case, the very first thing that I learned was the basic technology. I learned the different process units, but how they contributed to cost and how they contributed to profitability.
Yeah.
It was way simpler. And then I said, well, okay, I still don't know everything that I should know. How do I understand more? And a friend of mine, who's still my friend today, we communicate all the time, he wrote one of the first computerized LPs for Exxon.
Okay.
And he wrote a model that you could model any operation and predict the profitability. And he said, Tom, there's no class for learning refining economics. That's not for another year and a half. And I wanted the promotion. So he gave me a deck of Fortran cards, and I ran it every night, looked at the results every morning. I beat my head against it. It was like beating the concrete years later. And just nothing happened. And finally, after about 6 months, boing, the light went on. And all of a sudden, I understood the concepts of refining economics. And since it was a linear program, I go, oh, that means I can graph it. It's linear. So I made a series of graphs that pretty much predicted with a 90+% accuracy almost any combination of market conditions and material and operating costs. And so every time the boss says, well, should we do this? Should we look at this kind of crude? The market just changed. The price of diesel went up. The price of fuel oil went down. What should we do next? I didn't have to make any calculations. Here's the answer. It was never perfect, but that's when I also discovered the 80% rule.
Yeah.
To get 80% of the work done in 20% of the time, because management wants the answer now. They don't want the answer next week or 3 days from now or even 2 hours from now when there's hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour at play. So I learned by trial and error with the case, learning refining economics. Well, what was the next thing to learn? Well, investment economics, because as an engineer, I'm building stuff. Why are we building stuff? What should we build next? What is this really worth? Again, there was no class, no seminar. The Exxon runs good seminars, but there wasn't anything in my time frame that I could get to. So I just broke out a book and worked every bloody case in the prior course's manual.
Okay.
And I said, okay, now I understand investment economics. And while I was there, they ran a course on supply and transportation economics, but I was tied up on something else and couldn't do it. So I got the course material, and Exxon moves oil all over the world. And believe me, they were at the time, they were around 3 million barrels a day.
Wow.
And a good bit of it was coming into Aruba. Later, when I was doing the economics, that was what? They were 300,000 barrels a day of oil coming in, oil coming out, and 1.5 million to 2 million barrels a day for transshipping. Come in on big ships that couldn't fit in the United States, put it in a tank, load it in small ships, go to the United States, transshipping operation. And I'm going, and that's when I learned I really didn't want to go home. Working was just fascinating. There was no end to it. But I said, okay, let me study the manual for the supply and transportation. And then life went on. I got the promotion into the job I wanted. I got the job as the kind of the staff assistant to a guy that went very high in the company. And the opportunity then came up. They needed a teacher for the course. And I said, I've never taken it, but yeah, give me a chance. I'll teach you. I mean, if I'd have fallen on my face, it'd have been career over, close the door, ship the body out, not even with the toe tag on. So I ended up teaching all 3 of those seminars at different times, the refining economics twice. And the first time I taught it, I'm the youngest guy in the room. The guys in that room are 3 levels above me. They rank me.
Wow.
I mean, your career is on the line. And it went just fine. I had no complaints at all. And like an older friend of mine said when I first started, you don't really understand the subject until you have to teach it, not to some dumb guys, but to your peers or better. If you can survive that, you know your subject. So there I was as the Texas rancher, just slowly incrementing what I knew. And then, okay, what else is going on? Well, we move a lot of clean products, gasoline, diesel oil, jet fuel, fuel oil. What's the difference between all of that? I'm not a chemical engineer. Well, I read the book, and then I go to the lab, talk with the guy in the lab. Well, how do you know that motor gasoline has this, but kerosene is like this? Oh, here's the laboratory equipment. Well, how do you run the laboratory equipment? Oh, here's 250 videos that each piece of equipment and the importance of the characteristic. Well, I'm sitting on, I only had to work 40 hours a week, but okay, I worked 60, 65 hours a week. But the last 20, 25 hours after being a project engineer, I was in the company library over by the laboratory watching those 200 and something videos. So then I came out of there immediately. That had no commercial value to me at all. But when it was time to leave Aruba, they sent me to Miami, where that was the office that ran all of Exxon's business oil distribution throughout Central America, the Caribbean, and the northern part of South America. And after a year of being the advisor, because I knew the economics, I had a bunch of ideas to change things, do things differently, but the answer was from the older guys. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way we've always done it. So after a while, I said, well, if I can't make a contribution, move me out. Well, they moved out the guy that was in charge. Hey, he did all right. He was status quo. He maintained a business that had been set up and run that way for 30 years. And I remember the manager saying, okay, smart guy, here's the keys to the fleet. It was like he gave me a fleet of cars, but he gave me, I think at the time when I started, it was 8 or 9 vessels. and the guys that were running all of that, and it was like 150, 175,000 barrels a day of crude oil and mixed products going all over the world. So immediately it's the shift from the theory to the practicality of operations. I was really blessed. This is where the idea of learning more comes in handy. It isn't all on a videotape. It isn't all in a course. I was the youngest guy in the room, but was given the chance to be the supervisor. 2 of the guys started work before I was born. Okay.
Wow.
All right. That's how much experience they had. So I knew I had to win them over. They were resentful. Who's the smart ass pup in here telling us what to do? Well, thank God I knew the theory of, the only thing I knew actually about ships was the front was the pointy end. And economically, if it was sitting still, I was definitely losing money. The rest you had to learn on the job, and it's more than just in a seminar. But with time and talking with these extremely experienced, practical guys, I learned to shift just not the theory, but the actual practicality. And then I started winning their respect, because all these guys were entitled to at least a month's vacation, in a couple of cases, 6 weeks of vacation. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, there's 9 guys with running different operations.
Okay.
Whenever one of them, I asked them, try not to have more than 1 guy, 1.5 guys out on vacation at a time. And that spreads it out over the whole year. And they understood the practicality. There were 2 guys out. I never asked that guy to cover that guy's responsibility. On top of what I was expected to do, I did that guy's work. And when then he came back and that guy went on vacation, I did his work. That's when I won them over. But how did I win them over? I was like a sponge. Tell me everything you know. Give me the knowledge. I never implied even that the theoretical knowledge outweighed their, because they had the theoretical knowledge too,
of course,
outweighed their practical experience. And I'll wrap with the, gradually, I am where I am now as a consultant. Very little of what I do has anything at all to do with civil engineering. And that's been the case for the last 15, 20 years. How did I do it? I just incrementally, and sometimes it didn't pay out. The knowledge of all the qualities of oil, that didn't pay out until I took that group over and now was responsible for 9 different grades of gasoline into 12 different countries. You had to have an understanding of what was unique about each grade of gasoline. And my team changed all kinds of ways of what they've been doing for 30-something years. It was their ideas. I empowered them to do it, and they appreciated that, instead of micromanaging everything because, oh my God, if something goes wrong, you'll get blamed. No, you guys are competent. Tell me when there's a problem. It's kind of an approach. And my team turned it just from a money-losing cost center into an incredibly profitable profit center over a period of just 3 years.
Wow.
So it was a good experience for them. It was a fantastic experience for me. And that was the final, I'm still learning. I'm still learning on the job even here in Curacao, but that really got me to, I already understood the refining, and then I understood supply and transportation. I had that practical experience. Phenomenal. And I guess you asked me earlier about highlights of my life, and I didn't mention something at work. One of the guys who was working before I was born thought he was going to be the next supervisor, not him, not me. And he really resented that. And at his retirement party, everybody's had a bunch of drinks, and I'm going, oh, this could really get bad, because the guy really, for years, was hostile to me. And then when he wasn't hostile, he was at least neutral. And he always did his job. Never underestimated this guy didn't do his job. When it came time for him to make his farewell speak, he gets up in front of 150 people, and he goes, see that guy over there? And he points at me. And he goes, when he showed up on the job, I hated his guts. And he goes, I have to admit, I went out of my way to cause him problems. He said, I'm retiring now with over 35 years from the company. He says, that's the best guy I ever worked with.
Wow.
Best compliment I ever got in my life. Wow.
Oh, the turntable.
Yeah, no, I didn't know what he was going to say, but he had the integrity to tell the truth, despite his personal disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
He recognized that I had potential and allowed him and his co-workers to do things that they had never been allowed to do before. And man, did we make a lot of money. We just revolutionized everything. So I'll stop with that. The idea that I tell young people, start with anything that you think you like. That's just the starting point. If you're smart, you never quit learning, even if you can't monetize it. Thank you. You've been a very patient listener.